Tuning in to Channel 4, the cultural channel, Clearwater Nation. It's Pamela Timmins. High noon, and I'm taking a break from the urban garden here. I've been planting seeds and growing food, and you can see that it's a magical experience. Here we are in Lower Manhattan, and we have the Battery Park Urban Garden, growing kale, growing tomatoes, there's basil, there's parsley. It's just a really amazing experience. I first learned about it by going to the Just Food conference, and my show last month was about that conference. Grow our own food. Just have to pay attention to water. When the rain comes, and that's a good thing. You know, we tend to think, oh no, not the rain, but you have to, enjoy that too. And, we can walk out into our garden and, just experience the magic of Mother Earth providing for us these great vegetables, fruit, things that nurture us in a way that the store-bought food just doesn't have it. And we're going to also be hearing about how GMO is a kind of experimental process that Monsanto is, pushing on us. We don't know that we're eating it because our foods aren't labeled. In Europe, they actually want to know if they're eating GMOs. And here in our country, we're not even aware that there are GMOs. Apparently in Europe, 5% of their produce is genetically modified. And here, they're saying 90% of our produce is genetically modified. We're not even aware of it. And we're not aware of how that's going to affect our health and the development of our children. I'm really glad that, I attended this Just Food conference. There were a lot of very knowledgeable people who have tremendous experience with establishing urban gardens from just empty lots. So Colia Clark is running for Green Party Senate seat, and she just came back from the convention in Baltimore just last weekend.
I'm sure you're on the same page on that one. So, SNAP is obviously good for the economy in New York because they spend the money on, especially if you spend it on local New York produce, then that'll help the economy. So.
Right, there's no question.
Will Allen from Growing Power was here. I missed him too, I was at work, but he came by the urban farm at the Battery, took a look around even here. He said he was very pleased with the way we gardeners grow too. And then he was on Stephen Colbert and talked about it.
All right, you have peppers and what else here? Tomatoes
so
and peppers?
I have leeks, herb garden here, peppers, tomatoes, eggplant ready.
There too.
If they come off easily, then they're ready. Like this is a little one, but it's ready.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got some hot ones in here also.
They got plenty of me. I'm looking at them all down to you.
Wow, I must be missing them.
I'm an old farmer myself.
Are you really? Where are you from?
Mississippi.
Oh yeah, that's farming.
So I generally can look and see, but many of the herbs and stuff I don't know because we did not grow them.
Oh yeah, it is kind of
but your tomatoes off here, you're buying tomatoes and you've stocked them here and they're really off here wonderful.
Coming, as long as the squirrels don't get Oregano is going wild.
Wow.
My parsley's not doing so great. And I had...
You think it's too hot for the parsley right with you?
Yeah, or I don't know exactly what's going on. It never really took very well.
Oh, I see. How do you get your garden?
Well, I had helped set up, helped last year with that.
All right.
So I think people that had a significant role in the creation of the farm or in had plots last year got to have plots this year.
Very good.
But it's not a community garden as much as a place that people who have supported the farm can have like a little
have a little space.
But everyone supports the farm now in the sense that if you come by and anyone can volunteer and
yes,
etc. So I was very involved, and so now this is all I pretty much do at this point. I have a full-time job now.
That's enough for you.
Yeah, but it's great.
It's
a lot
wonderful.
of fun. It is a lot of fun.
And you're doing a great job with it.
Well, it looks good this year. It was a little we had a weird spring. It was like hot, then cold, and dry, then wet, and so things kind of had a rough start. But now they look like they're going gangbusters. So
this is good. This is all over. Everywhere I see is green, and everywhere I see is in full growth. The German language group here.
I guess, yeah. And then another group works with challenged adults. I don't know, one of those plots down there, they do.
All right.
So there are group plots here too. And then in the farm, there's like the farm where they grow for production. And then also schools have their own plots down the middle.
Right.
These are mostly, like I said, you should take pictures of the farm itself. That they were originally chemical warfare, and then they decided to put their chemical warfare ingredients to agricultural use or whatever, and I'm just not really a big fan of that kind of farming. And then the GMO thing is not exactly dear to my heart either. I wouldn't want to eat too many genetically modified foods, but at minimum, I would want to know that I'm eating them.
Right.
So
right.
I'm always suspicious of a group that doesn't want you to know something. Like that's just not really seems to be particularly honest. I mean, if you're so proud of your work, why would you not want someone to know that your work is contained in the food that they're putting in theirs and their children's mouths?
Especially when you're making billions.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're making lots and lots of money off of something, why? I heard on, I don't know, Bill Maher's the most, accurate source of information per se, but I did hear just the other night, he said that in Europe, first of all, they require GMO labeling. And just period, only 5% or something of food products have genetically modified organisms in there, or in them, and in the United States it's like 90-something%.
Yeah,
unless you grow it yourself, and even the seeds, half the time you don't really even know like
where they're coming
from and whatever. And then that whole thing with suing farmers where Monsanto's drift takes over somebody else's field, and then they sue them for growing their products. I mean, that seems like a kind of odd way to do business.
Very imperial.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that we can do? One of the things, obviously, that's happening here, whether it's a reaction to what Monsanto is doing with genetically modified foods, or whether it's just the waking up of folk in New York that they need to feed themselves.
Right. I think that there's a food sovereignty issue that started to emerge a bit, and I think that New Yorkers particularly are doing a really good job of bringing that aid and attention. There's only so many places you can grow food in New York. I mean, let's not mince words. So we do have to rely upon our other local farmers as well and support them. I mean, we're not going to feed the city off of a farm like this. Although I can do a decent job of feeding myself, but
I was looking at you. You do a pretty good job feeding yourself.
Yes, exactly. That's
a double entendre. More than just assistance for you. You can do a little canning and a little drying for the winter season, which would really be good.
Yes. So there's that, and also there's only. I do some freezing, but New York freezers are not like suburban freezers where you can have a whole freezer in your basement. But still, I mean, I've already frozen like 5 or 10 bags of greens, and then I'll probably make tomato sauce once the tomatoes are really up in fall and whatever. So, my parents have a gardener now. It's in Connecticut, but he lives in like the city part of Stamford, so it's like a less than a quarter-acre plot, like a tiny little plot. He has like 250 tomato plants and 150 pepper plants, and like he literally lives off of like everything he grows.
Sure.
Yeah, so he cans. Well, his wife is like they're old school Italian. Yes. Like he makes his own prosciutto and makes his own wine and that kind of thing. All like in practically a city, like a version of a Brooklyn apartment. Like a brownstone type of apartment.
So when you say old school,
I mean like old school.
You're talking about before we became consumers.
Yeah, like he.
I call us bucket heads because we just become consumers.
Exactly. So go on. I'm sorry.
And I say it because our kids are not in a position to feed, clothe, or house themselves. One of the reasons I'm running for the Senate is I'm concerned about the educational curriculum.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one of the things that the urban farm here does, and a lot of the urban farms are not just to grow food for people to eat, which is part of it. But again, you can only feed so many people. It's to kind of re-educate the children into like, oh yeah, that's where my food comes from.
Yes.
And naturally, they really are catching on. It sounds like it's a new idea, but it's been going on for a few years. So now, I mean, I think this whole kind of farm to school thing and just getting kids involved in the dirt are starting to really happen.
Back at the dirt as opposed to the little bean in the glass.
Yeah, well, they do that too, but they also are
I mean, you can still do that,
Yeah,
but now when you really get in the dirt, it becomes a different story.
Yeah, exactly, and they're right, exactly, and they love it. Apparently, the kids just love it.
Yeah, because we're dependent now, and that's one reason why the Monsanto himself is so dangerous.
Yeah, well,
it's because we've become consumers who are dependent on others to provide us with food. We're dependent on the Food and the Drug Administration and
to tell us
the
about
Agriculture
food is safe,
Department,
right.
everybody to tell us, this is safe, this is not safe, this is good for you, and mean that.
I don't. Everyone always says, "Oh, we're America, we're not France." So I'm not like just trying to say, "Oh, we should be like France per se," but just think about like even what we did before we were consumers, as you said.
Yes.
Like in France, for instance, just to this day, babies do not eat canned baby food and formula. I mean, obviously they have breast milk, and then they also literally have like food. Like mama makes, just like, and they'll have leek soup. The baby will have leek soup.
Yeah, you strain for the baby.
Yeah, or like just basically the same food, like pureed kale, or even just start to have real food, like food with more chunks in it, food with more.
As they get older,
Yeah, so they actually have like whole food that mama makes, or Papa, whoever, like someone's cooking like real food, the same food that the adults are eating, but the babies are just eating a slightly modified version of that.
Well, that's
so
really
they start
important.
to. That's why we talk about like creating demand. It's like it's hard to compete with French fries and hamburgers if you don't. That's. I mean, we like our fat, sugar, and salt, but so do other countries, and they manage to have healthy food in between their fat, sugar, and salt. They'll have like cheese with some healthy vegetables. They'll have a little slice of prosciutto with some. Wine and a little of this. I mean, so there's plenty of salt, sugar, and fat to be had worldwide, but it's more like where it comes from. So it's you have to start to cultivate these flavors like at an early age. So that's where the education, I think, comes in.
Yeah, I think though. I mean, I grew up in Mississippi. Started out on farm.
Yeah, so you know how to eat
picking
good
cotton
food.
and did the whole works.
Yeah.
And then of course when I went back to Mississippi with my children, I remarried and went to a husband, and we got land, and I forced those 4 children to learn how to, first of all, learn what land is about.
Right.
That's a part of what kids should be learning, and I'm proposing, even though I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I certainly am willing to work with local legislatures in this, in that we have to be able to show kids how to select land.
Yeah.
Is it good land? Is it contaminated land?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Because that's one issue, and then from there you begin to talk about the issues of cultivating and of course eventually harvesting and how one preserves. But also we're talking about water, because one thing about agriculture, it is not a narrow area, it's everything. So we're talking about water, we're talking about road building, we're talking about redevelopment of infrastructure, energy uses. So I just think it's so important, and I think that this particular garden, urban farm they called it. Now when I said this is a farm,
high profile.
Of course from my vision it's not a farm, but it is a huge garden. And it's a lovely garden, but it's a beginning.
It's a beginning, and it's a place like that. I mean, this is both, it's a highly, first of all, you're right next to the big money. So even though they may be having Monsanto for clients, on the one hand, some of the people that work in these corporations and such will see this garden and start to think, a better world. So even it gets the people where the money is, This is a highly touristy area, as you could see, extremely touristy.
Sure.
So then you get a national conversation going. I mean, for God's sakes, Will Allen came,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And talked about it on Stephen Colbert. And Stephen Colbert,
wonderful.
kind of half made fun of it in that Stephen Colbert way. You know what I mean? That really means he loves it. You know what I mean? So, and he got Will Allen to laugh about, kohlrabi and getting kids to try to eat kohlrabi. It was very funny.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying. It's a national conversation. So you've got tourists from who knows where seeing an urban farm in the middle of New York City. So they start to think, back in, wherever I'm from, well, maybe we can have something like that.
It's not just a national conversation. The conversation itself, but it's a national movement, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I'm talking about a freedom agenda as I run for office. The right to things like the right to, the constitutional right to vote.
Yeah.
But we ought to be talking about a constitutional right to
grow your own food,
to
and
not just grow your own food, but to healthy
food
in a healthy environments. And I think we have to begin to force those issues.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have to, but we have been brought here because we have become the bucket heads, the consumers who you pour stuff into, and we oftentimes don't even know where it comes from or its value. Other than somebody said it was good for you, like macaroni and cheese, out of the box.
But hardly, right. I mean, I used to eat that when I was little, and I'm not the thinnest gal in the world, so it's hard to make up for years of use.
No,
but,
look at me.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not alone, darling. And I grew up healthily. There was no burgers. There was no hot dogs, as we call them. I can remember a woman when we came to the city. I was 5, and this woman next door sent me to the little cafe. Because my mother had gone to work, my father was at work, so she said, go to the cafe and I'll give you a nickel. And I said, okay. You tell them I want a hot dog.
And you're like, what's a hot dog?
I didn't know what a hot dog was. So when I came out, I told the kids in the hood, as they call it, all these young kids in little small apartment units. I said, I've got to get her a hot dog.
What's a hot dog?
And they said, well, some little kids spotted it. And he said, oh yeah, when you go in there, just tell Mr. hooter that you want a hot dog, tails and all. I said, okay. And the man, he became so furious that I knew right off. He thought it was a smart kitchen or he was a dummy, total dummy. But that is, we didn't have these foods accessible. So actually we're talking about the 60s for most of the South.
Yeah, right.
There were no pizza places. There were no Chinese joints. There were none of these things around. And in black communities, we had our own little cafes and bars, something somewhere, but very little of that. And we didn't eat out. I mean, there just wasn't an eat out, wasn't a tradition. No Kentucky Fried.
I worked, during 2008, I worked in for Obama in North Carolina, and I went to near NC Central to do voter, where you make sure everyone gets to vote.
Right.
And I had lunch at a black cafe. And, well, there certainly was fried chicken and all that, too.
Yeah.
I tell you, I had to have, it was one of the healthiest meals. It had a stewed chicken, collards, like a salad. I mean, there's traditional farm food, regardless of culture, it's healthy.
That's right.
You got a chicken, you got,
In the old restaurants in the South, you had a healthy diet of vegetables. You had a healthy
and a little bit of meat, because meat was expensive.
Yeah, but in terms of the family, most people didn't get meat except for Sundays.
Yeah, right.
If your family had the time, they would could get away from farm work, fish on Saturday. So you would get, Saturday was a fish day rather than Fridays.
Okay.
So it just wasn't there. I mean, you just didn't have it. So I didn't grow up with meat.
Oh,
and
it was
as
like
the
a
poet
rare...
said, years later, the poet Matabuti, he was writing as Bernard Lee at that time before he changed his name. He said, the breakfast of champions is black-eyed peas and collard greens.
Yes, it is.
The breakfast of champions is black-eyed peas and collard greens.
You start your New Year's that way.
Yeah. So it was because that's what we had. I mean, you didn't have both of those often. The big struggle for most people was having more than one vegetable and a piece of bread.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to more than one vegetable. That was the struggle.
Right.
But then the 60s came, and a new world opened, and blacks could go into restaurants, and we could now shop in white areas and and so blacks like poor whites, because poor whites weren't
doing much better. Right.
We're doing the same thing we were doing.
Right.
And that is trying to figure out how to eat. Right. so
he had like a German version of the soul food diet. Like it would be like collards and beans, and all of the same ingredients, just with a German tweak.
Yeah, with the German flavor.
But the same thing, lots and lots of.
Yeah, Germans were very popular in some areas, like the goulash and stuff like that.
Yeah.
From the Polish and the Germans.
He was from southern Missouri, so it's still the Cotton Belt.
The
Cotton Belt was just ended 14 miles north of him. And that was
so we got succotash, which is probably a combination of German and African.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So,
it is actually. That's exactly.
Those things were just there, but there was healthy food. You grew the food. Everybody had a garden.
Yeah.
I go home now to Jackson. The gardens are gone, and Mom and Dad are gone. So even
Walmart's in its stead.
Even my brothers don't have a garden. One of his children live in the house.
First of all, they don't have time now because they got to work like 10 jobs. And,
Now look, let's talk about work, because that was the work era I'm talking about. That's when you worked 14 and 15 hours a day.
Oh, yeah.
And you came home. Barely able to get a shower, a wash up as they called it down south, because you didn't have a shower.
Oh, yeah.
Feed your children and get in bed so you could get up the next morning at 3:30, 4 o'clock.
That sounds pretty hard.
And start it again, you know. So it is true that it has to do with time, but I think a part of the consumerism is the minute dinners. You come in and in 15 minutes it can be on the table.
Yeah, because
it's another whole area. So the instant food, the instant this and the instant that, are part of the consumerism. So call for the doctor. The doctor said, feed that baby some shortening bread. No more lard. So it was this kind of, the ditties and no more mammy-made clothes and mammy-made hairdos.
Yeah, right.
It was all on Mama. As we were being, just kind of forced into an age when we would no longer be able to provide for ourselves.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Working those sharecropping fields was not exactly
not fun. No.
Not fun, but you did at least have some degree of sovereignty over your own food.
Your own food, yes.
Right, you had your own garden.
Where you got food.
Yeah, you got food.
Now,
but
families like mine that had land, obviously,
the
black folk had food. Even when we moved to the cities, we bought the little house with the big lots, big 180 by 360 it always.
You live in, what part of town do you live in?
Jackson, Mississippi, North Jackson.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're running You're not running.
No, I'm running here in New York.
Oh,
But this
okay.
is when I was in. Now
Oh.
I'm in Sugar Hill, darling.
Oh, do you have a
The sugar's
spot?
gone, but the hill is still there.
Yes, there's a really nice garden up in Sugar Hill that Karen,
Yes.
I think Karen Washington runs. Or,
Right, and not only that, we got some great flower gardens. I mean, there's shrubs and flowers, and so there's one at 152nd and St. Nicholas Avenue.
Yeah, that's
that
the
says,
one.
Oh
That's the one. On
my!
a hill, like, kind of
And
like
yeah,
on a
and
hill.
yeah, and she has a beautiful some veggies in there as well.